This episode is made possible by NetSuite by Oracle and Brex, the AI-powered spend platform.
Hi, this is Lauren St. Clair, the CFO of NerdWallet, and you're listening to the CFO Thought Leader Podcast.
This is episode 980.
Get that expertise, making sure that the talent continue to be trained. Us as well as a head office, we do dabble quite a bit in it. Like looking at that legal tech, look what's out there. We're the biggest one in the industry, right? So we have a unique vantage point to be at the forefront of it. But again, if you sit on your hands for too long, you're going to be obsolete very, very quickly. It doesn't matter where you're starting from because this field is changing so much. And sometimes size doesn't necessarily help you on those things because a lot of the small startup actually are getting the technology that you really need. So you really need to look everywhere and be on your toes basically to maximize it. Same thing with the regulatory environment. It changes super quickly. So you need to be there at the forefront of it as it changes.
Hi, it's Jack. On today's show, we speak with Eric Bouchard, CFO of Axiom. No one experience perhaps better reveals the breadth of challenges that can test even the most stoic finance career builder than that which confronted Eric Bouchard a little more than a decade ago at Bombardier Incorporated. Tasked by the management with negotiating the establishment of a new aerospace facility, Bouchard navigated through complex discussions with the Moroccan government, balancing the interests of Bombardier and the aspirations of a nation. His role extended beyond finance. He became a diplomat, a strategist, and most importantly, a bridge between diverse cultures and economic ambitions. You'll hear that story and much more on today's episode. We'll begin after this. 37,025-1. These are the three numbers to remember to get the visibility and control you need to make the right business decisions instantly. 37,000. That's the number of businesses which have upgraded to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite is the #1 cloud financial system, streamlining accounting, financial management, inventory, HR, and more. 25. NetSuite turns 25 this year. That's 25 years of helping businesses do more with less, close their books in days, not weeks, and drive down expenses. 1. Because your business is one of a kind, you should get a customized solution for all of your KPIs in one efficient system and with one source of truth. Manage risk, get reliable forecasts, and improve margins. Everything you need, all in one place. Right now, download NetSuite's popular KPI checklist designed to give you consistently excellent performance, absolutely free, at netsuite.com/KPI. That's netsuite.com/KPI. Hello, we're speaking with Eric Bouchard, CFO of Axiom. Eric, welcome.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you for having me.
So, Eric, we always like to begin by asking our guests to look back for us. And again, we're looking for those experiences that you feel really help prepare you for the role you have today. What would those be?
Well, look, I have to say I feel blessed personally. I'm very proud of my career. I'm very proud of every step along the way. And then, a career is really a bunch of building blocks, right? You one after the other, and they all make you the individual you are. So I have to say, I'm very proud of my journey. It started all the way back in the mid 90s with KPMG. I'm a CPA by trade. And basically back then it was required to actually start with the audit firm. And it's too bad they removed that requirement now and actually complained to the auditor. I'm like, this is such a good way to start a career. I absolutely loved it. I was with KPMG for 5 years here in Montreal. And to me, it's tremendous because when you start, let's be clear, you're so green when you're coming out of school, right? You don't really know anything. And it's wonderful because it allows you to see all these different companies and their culture and their ways to operate. And obviously, you want to know more because you're not part of management itself. But the fact that you get to see all these, and right away I realized, I'm like, wow, this company would be a great fit for me. Whereas this one, I would really not fit in. Like I could see, like it's not me, it's not who I am. Their values are that. But to know that at such an early age, it's actually fantastic. And the other great thing a lot about public accounting is that every year, like actually, you really go up in the rank. Like, I mean, the first thing you're really doing nothing like the little shoebox company and stuff. But after 1 year, like you're already starting to manage people. Then you started to manage big account. And I ended up like after 2 years, basically, I had like 4 major clients that would keep me busy, like a December year end, a March year end, a June year end, and a September year end. And this was my year, and it was like super fun. I got like very deep in them, and you can get that business knowledge and stuff. So to me, like my 5 years at KPMG were a fantastic experience, and no better way to start a career in finance.
Tell us a little bit about the types of companies you were, initially serving.
Oh, it was super varied, I have to say. There's a lot of manufacturing around here, and you'll see that's a common theme around throughout my career. I guess that there's been a lot of manufacturing. That's what makes the current position I'm occupying so much fun. But one was a big sugar manufacturer, was into the piping industry. The other one was making bottles, for Coke and Pepsi, and then water bottles and stuff. So, and one was actually that manufacturing big long-term equipment with China and stuff. So, very different, varied industry, many locations across the board, had to travel quite a bit. KPMG made me travel quite a bit, mostly in the US, actually traveled quite a bit in the US and the rest of Canada. Thereafter, as I continue my career, I had global roles in being based technically in other locations, but always from Montreal. So that's also part of the journey.
When you do leave, what's the attraction? What's on your mind? What opportunity are you looking to pursue?
Well, look, I mean, the point is always to keep learning, right? So that's always the way I build my career. I never ran my career to say I want to be exactly that. To me, it's all about look at the moment. Like even when I was with KPMG for the 5 years, actually, at some point, they offered me to become like a technical partner. I'm strong on technical. I wrote many IFRS book. Actually, I did, big IFRS conversion project later in my career as well. I'm still teaching today. I love that academic part. I did a bunch of diploma. I've got an MBA, a CFA, whatever. I love to learn, I guess. And so the technical aspect made sense to me because that was great. At the same time, I grew up, my dad was very entrepreneurial. I had that entrepreneurial spirit in me. It's fun to create. So after 5 years at KPMG, I have a decision to make. Do you want to stay on the consulting side and help clients? This is really fun and it's a young, dynamic environment. Or do you actually want to do real stuff yourself kind of thing, be part and really building it? It's very different from the consulting side than on the doing side, the company side. And that's when I made the decision that, yes, as much fun as it could be to be a partner in a Big Four, let me, go and build something myself.
And it's towards the end of your years with KPMG, you do get an MBA. And is that, points you in a new direction in some way or no?
The school was always helpful and, getting the diploma and getting the knowledge and stuff. But I can never say it completely changed my direction. The change of the direction really came more from the business itself and observing those business and stuff and what can you do. So I think, look, academia is fantastic and I love it and I'm not going to go against it because, it's a lot of who I am. And it gives you a very strong foundation for what you want to accomplish. At the same time, the real world happens on the business side. And that's really what should be driving you. And that's where the opportunities are really created, I feel.
So just tell us about stepping into industry and whether it was different from the environment at KPMG, whether there was, what did you make of it?
Oh, night and day. Actually, it's funny because I got into a more technical role at the beginning because that was my area of expertise, right? I was still very green and unproven from a business standpoint. So actually, it's funny because and in 2002, I made the move to go to Quebecor World, which back then was the biggest printing company in the world. Biggest printing company in the world in 2002. I'm sure you can do the math. Not necessarily the best place to be. So printing was, I guess, at its A point at that point. Yep. Our two biggest clients were the Sears catalog and the Yellow Pages. So to age yourself a little bit, for some of your older listener, they'll say, "Oh, I remember those things very well." Your younger listener will probably say, "What are those things?" And there's a reason for it. So that wasn't too good for the business. It was one of those jobs I got in because the audit committee basically told them they needed a technical accounting experts. I got in the first day. They say, "Here's your office. We don't really know what you need to do. So, but the other company is going to be happy you're here. So have fun." So I really started with the company like having literally nothing to do. Like for the first 2, 3 months, like I was just staying at the office and asking everybody how I could help and stuff, and then slowly building. And within 2 years, I had built a team of I had like 4 or 5 direct report. I was managing 10 consultants. I was like on many different projects working directly. Like they changed my reporting line a few times, and it's about being creative sometimes, right? You cannot let the world take care of you. You need to take care of yourself. Even if you don't have a lot of work, you need to stick around. Back then we were, in person at the office, right? So people working overtime, you stayed there overtime with them, like even though you don't have much to do because you want to be there and support whenever they need you and stuff. So that's how I kind of, grew up and realized, oh, I can help on that project. And then the project becomes bigger and bigger. So
That's the start of Sarbanes and SOX, isn't it? Isn't that?
the start of socks, actually, I ended up like, it's funny because it was meant to be a technical accounting role, and I ended up being the guy that spent the most time almost at the whole head office visiting the plants. We had an M&A that wasn't going well, so I spent a lot of time in Greenwich Village, actually in the U.S., beautiful location. Trying to help the team to get accustomed to the transaction and then how we can work together. Then I ended up visiting each facility because they were all working in silos to see how we can leverage best practice among those facilities, which is very not technical accounting per se at all, just to be clear, but going to see all these different locations and meeting the people. And it's actually funny because those people are like, you know what? Nobody from head office ever came here. Like it's like, what are you doing here? And then they're like so happy and so welcoming and so receiving. And then once they realize that you're not their enemy and you want to work together and help them, it's amazing how many doors open and how you can work together. And that's how I got into all these projects. Yes, SOX became part of it at some point indeed. But we try to do SOX again, not from a compliance standpoint, because that's the boring part, right? You can just tick the box. But can you make it a value added project? What can you do with it? We did the same thing with internal audit. We had an internal audit function. How can we make internal audit not just a compliance thing, but a value added thing to make us better as a company, to help improve, to leverage best practice? So this is part of the stuff that I developed in those years. And obviously, given the fact that the business was going like this, with the printing world, finding those efficiencies, seeing what plant is better than others, like how you can, bring those synergies and stuff was obviously critical for us as an organization.
I want to just tip your hand a little bit for the audience because Axiom is actually your third CFO tour of duty, and you have two others and not short tenures either. But there's one company that I think perhaps played a formative role in your development as a leader and advanced you down the CFO path perhaps the most. And would I be correct by saying that would be
Bombardier
Transportation?
Absolutely. Bombardier was, I spent
What
9 years.
happens to you there? And again, you did make an investment of 8.5 years there. So you made that investment, but you advanced as well.
Bombardier was, amazing for me, I have to say. Like I started at the head office, I was in charge, like it really, I have always loved investor relation, but I was there like front and center in the investor relation department, dealing with a public company and having all this in and out. I think that's super educational. Like I love that IR piece, what you say, what you don't say, when you report results, when they're good, when they're bad. So working a lot on that. As well, like what I did in my first 5 years at the head office, I was in charge of publishing the financial statements, working until 5, 6 a.m. to press the button, you release. We ended up with the award-winning financial statements. I brought my whole team to receive the trophies and all, brought great pride. So that was fantastic. Made it, again, more business, more operational, spending a lot of time with the different locations that we had to. Again, it's how you bring that technical accounting, more business purpose, which is motivating from both sides because your technical people start understanding the business, so they're more engaged into their work. And then the business starts understanding better what you're trying to bring, so they understand like your reality better as well and understand how to structure the transaction. Bombardier was also it's an train and plane manufacturer, basically. So we were doing a lot of structured financing. I love financing, so spent a lot of time doing that, building all these complex structures, the credit guarantees and all these things. So that was really fun. And my most important project, I would say, those first 5 years was Canada decided to go to an IFRS conversion. So we went from Canadian GAAP to IFRS. The US entertained it for a while as well, decided not to go there. But Bombardier has one of the most complex accounting worldwide, I would say, given its different business. Back then it did, at least. my boss actually was sitting on the IFRS committee, just to tell you, like that's how advanced we were, and I was in charge of the project basically. So again, requiring a lot of travel time, understanding and stuff. And we ended up being a leader in the industry. That's why I wrote a bunch of books about it and stuff as well. But gave a seminar to our shareholders, so that was really transformative. But after that came after those 4.5 years at head office, I went to the aerospace division. And it's funny, like I was in charge of structured financing for all the Americas and Middle East, which was a great day job selling business aircraft, like doing trade shows and all, non-finance at all. But I was actually a bit of a cover because I had a mission on the side there. I felt like a special secret agent kind of thing. But as you may know, the aerospace industry is actually only present in very few countries, like very few countries in the world have that expertise. And Morocco, actually, the king himself wanted to establish an aerospace industry in Morocco. And so Bombardier was actually targeted. There's a lot of affinity between Quebec and Morocco for historical reason and language and whatnot. So actually, I was mandated to be like the kind of the secret agent to go negotiate with Morocco. So I would spend a lot of time there, 1 or 2 weeks a month for several months to actually go there and negotiate the agreement for the government to basically help us finance the creation of a new facility, as well as negotiate with universities to create the labor pool that would be needed to man that facility. So that was actually one of the most fantastic projects I've had in my life. Very different, like big stakeholder negotiations, and until 4 or 5 a.m. during Ramadan and stuff. And then obviously very high stakes, dealing with very different cultural aspects as well, obviously. And we ended up, I'm super proud because I was the lead negotiator on the discussion. And at the end, I brought my top management team, all the leaders, to meet the king and everything. And we actually cut the ribbon and opened that brand new facility in Morocco. And now Morocco, thanks to that negotiation, is one of those few countries in the world that has an aerospace industry. So wow. That was actually fantastic. Following that, I did 3 years at transportation. I was in charge of all Bombardier Transportation America. My boss was actually in Germany because that's where there's a lot of trade business. Very tough business though. The Chinese competitors are pretty forceful on that front. So we went through major reorgs and stuff, major contracts. So overall, I can say those 9 years were indeed extremely formative, Jack. Yeah.
Wow. That's really an interesting experience. I mean, and I would imagine the CFO, when he looked over his team, you were sort of a special breed of some, you weren't just the accountant anymore, not just the technical accountant. You're opening opportunities in different parts of the world and understanding how to, how the government and the commercial world intersect. How am I doing?
Absolutely. Look, I mean, it's funny because people want to put you in holes, right? And say, for instance, with all my diploma and stuff, and I did so many technical accounting, it's easy to be pigeonholed and say, hey, you're the technical accountant, you're the specialist, and you could do that. But I never really wanted to be any of those things, just to be clear. I pride myself in being that generalist that likes, the same way. I've been in many companies that had difficulties. I just told you about the printer, the train business back in the years that I was there, were under massive restructuring. So I could be that cutting CFO that comes in and, just restructure costs and stuff, which I'm happy. I do have that skill. I've done it several times in my life. But actually, I pride myself in being a growth CFO. I actually much better work on the top line than the bottom line. Believe me, it's much easier to manage a P&L that way. When you grow 15%, the bottom line takes care of itself pretty easily. So it's actually really fun to work with the business and actually grow this operation. The IR piece is super fun. The treasury structured financing piece is super fun. So that's my point. In terms of, you're right. I don't know if it's being a special breed, but I'm very intellectually curious. That's why I did all these diplomas, I guess, and stuff. And I like to touch everything. So I never really wanted to be a specialist into one thing too much, because it's actually so much fun to be able to do all these things. And also it brings you great flexibility, because you know what? You may think you're a growth CFO, but in one day, the 15% growth doesn't come and you're down 5%. You know what? You better have that other skill set, because the top line doesn't pay for everything and you do need to restructure. So I think it's good to have, these different skills and be adjustable and flexible for whatever the world throws at you, basically.
Yeah, can I, and just regarding Morocco and what was achieved there, to understand better, again, I'm just thinking of the C-suite back at Bombardier, knowing that Eric has been over in Morocco, spending all this time, how you're communicating with them. In a lot of ways, you seem like a diplomat. I mean, the government starts sending very positive signals or very questioning signals. You have to relay that back. Different organizations are better at this than others. You were fortunate, perhaps, to have that sort of C-suite mind share that let Eric, give him the berth he needs over there. Can you describe that to us? Because it seems to me you could have been hung out to dry out there. You could have negotiated, and then you call back home and they say, nope, we're not doing that. But I mean, so there's a lot of communication that had to go on, and you must be good at that.
Absolutely. And look, I mean, and it's funny because back then I was still, fairly junior in the organization. Like I wasn't junior, but I wasn't like a C title executive at all, just to be clear. And I was thrown into that high stake negotiation. And actually, funny enough, like when I joined Bombardier at first, there was one person, the VP, the CFO of the aerospace division, that hated my guts. And, we didn't get along at all for the first 2 years. And slowly but surely, like I kept working on her and working on her. And believe it or not, she's the one that gave me that assignment at the end of the day that says, hey, I'll throw that guy coming from technical accounting to go negotiate the Moroccan government, even though I'm no Moroccan at all, just to be clear. Like, and I trust him to do that. And back to your question, I mean, look, when I did my MBA, I followed a class and I kept the book, it's Essential Negotiations, because I felt like it was such a good tool. Like it's learning some of those, and a lot of it is stakeholder management, because you end up, look, you go there and they want a bunch of things that you cannot give. And you come back home after that, then there's a bunch of things so you have to manage your stakeholders from both sides, big organization or government. It's super political, right? So you have to manage what you can and cannot give. You have to know what stakeholders, like for instance, I would bring my legal team with me sometimes, but there's some meetings I would exclude them from the meeting because I know like they would say no to everything that would be discussed in that meeting, but I could not have that happening, right? So you have to be selective into who you bring where. You have to be selective in terms of, at some point, I need your approval. But at some point, I'm going to go above your head, just to be clear, because I need that deal to happen. And I know you'll say no, but I think if I talk to your boss, you'll say yes. But I cannot overdo that, because if I overplay that card, then you're not going to follow me on that deal, right? So it's how you manage your different stakeholders, when to go above, when to go to whom, who to invite to each meeting. And it's a big learning, I have to say. And you get burned a few times.
When did you, I think you referenced a book on negotiation. I mean, how did you get the negotiation smarts? I mean, is that something you had to learn on your own? I mean, and it's a great discussion because so many CFOs realize, they're on the ground floor and they thought they were up the elevator on a negotiation. Many aren't. Yeah.
Look, a lot of it is intuition. I would say a big part of it is just listening, right? I mean, just be aware of your surrounding and know your stakeholders. I know that if I bring it this way, you will say no, but if I bring it that way, he may say yes. She doesn't like it that way, but she likes it this way, right? So who to be like? So it's a lot of that, and of course, look, it wasn't perfect. Don't get me wrong. Like I got burned a few times. There's a couple of meetings I got slapped on the wrist like quite hard. Like, how could you say that we could do this or what? Okay, fine. Look, you want the deal or you don't. Like and you got to play your cards, and sometimes you overplay your card a little bit. So look, I'm not saying I did refer to that course because I thought it was helpful. Like to sometimes you need to take a step back to say, hold on, like because in those negotiations at some point you hit a jam, right? You're like, oh my god, like this is a dead end. Like they don't want to concede on this, we don't want to concede on that, and we know nobody's going to move. What do I do? So that's the time that, okay, can I take a step back here? You go back to your mentor, you go back to this person, you ask for a bit of input, and you got to be creative and always find solution. And resiliency is very key in those things. Like these are month-long negotiation. They go for, and there's so many times you could give up, just to be clear. There's so many times the stakeholders say, no freaking way, right? We're not going to do this ever, give up. And you got to be there and say, hold on a second. No, I can find a way. Trust me.
That's great. It sounds a little entrepreneurial as well. It sounds like you're thinking on your feet and, identifying the opportunity and pursuing it. So,
well, look, I grew up in a super humble environment. My dad had a day job in the manufacturing plant, but he decided to have a company on his own. Like it was right next to my bedroom. He was negotiating with clients until 3 a.m., I guess. Maybe at some point it brings in your head. And, unemployment rate was like more than 10%. So I guess you grow up and you're like, hey, look, it's tough out there. So don't give up. It's normal. You got to fight.
All right. So I'll remind the listeners we're speaking to Eric Bouchard, not your average technical accountant. Eric, but when you leave Bombardier, you are onto onto a CFO role, and you're really going to open up your first chapter there. Am I right about that, or help us with the timing?
100%, absolutely. When I left Bombardier in 2015, at that point I was the CFO of the Bombardier Transportation North America, but it was a division within Bombardier. When I got to Axiom Innovations, that was actually as you said, like the first real CFO position per se, where there's no other finance person above you, and you're it, right? I mean, all this time, all this training that you've done to bring you to that level, and I have to say, it was fantastic. It was also my first real foray into private equity. I had done, I had dealt with private equity before, but this Atrium at that point, I had just, it was a public company that was taken private through a private equity firm called Primera, with I absolutely love working with, and they brought me in to help, do the value creation plan and bring the business to where it needs to be, being the top finance person there, and rebuild a bit the organization. And I have to say, wow, that's when all these learnings come in together, basically, right?
Now, was that a relationship, or did you have a recruiter who brought it to your attention, or?
A recruiter 100%, basically. Like Bombardier is a very good name, so I had, my name was pretty well known in the market and stuff. Still was a fight until the end to get the position. Yeah, that first official CFO position is always a tough one to get, right? Because there's other CFO out there and stuff that have done the job. But I guess I had a good fit with the president, guy coming from J&J that I'm still in touch with today. Like, he's a fantastic individual, Peter Luther. So, and, I learned a great deal from him, like a marketing genius, if you ask me. And, like what we're able and how complementary we were to each other were fantastic. So that's how I got the gig.
Now, that company was Atrium Innovations, is that correct? And
That's correct, yes.
Was there another transaction before you left, or did it remain private equity owned, or how?
Oh my goodness. I can definitely tell you more about that transaction if you want, because that was a complete breakthrough for me from a finance standpoint. Like, I was front and center of that deal, but indeed, like I was brought in to Atrium to help fix a few things that they had. Like, they had a manufacturing facility that had issued. They had an ERP conversion that didn't go well. We had some foreign international operation that needed some assistance. So that's really, I was brought in to fix those three things and bring the finance team to another level, which we did. We ended up finding some skeletons along the way as well, some additional fixes that not initially planned that you have to do, which is, again, part of life. It's normal. So that was great. And yes, this culminated with an exit, that was just fantastic, and, that I was a major part of.
And again, that was your first chapter. It was roughly nearly 9 years there. You then move into a CFO role at Nestle Health Services. Can you give us a sense of the size of these companies?
Yeah, absolutely. So look, I was with Axiom Innovation for 4.5 years, basically, before we got acquired by Nestle. Nestle was actually the transaction. Yeah, we were acquired indeed by Nestle. That was never my plan to actually work for Nestle. And funny enough, obviously, as a CFO of a PE-backed company, I'm pretty much number one on the synergy list, right? So I was keeping my resume pretty fresh at that point. But again, I was really involved in the transaction itself. Then they involved me a lot on the transition per se, right from the bat. I was kind of the main person at the head office and stuff. So because the president was based somewhere else, and so anyway, so I worked heavily with them, and I was supposed to last for 3 months, and then it became 6 months. And after 6 months, they actually called me and say, "Hey, Eric, maybe we would like to have you. And what would you think about?" It's actually the CFO of that Nestle Health Science division that said, "Maybe I'm due to do something else, and we don't have an individual like you. So would you like to take my spot?" So and next thing I know, that's what happened. So it's actually funny because it was supposed to be based in Switzerland, but he accepted to base a position in Montreal for me. So I was actually working, 1 to 2 weeks a month from Switzerland, but I was officially based in Montreal, and I took over the role. It was a fantastic job. I mean, basically, Nestle Health Science was a little less than $3 billion in sales when I joined in 2019. And when I left at the end of 23, it was almost $7 billion in sales. So we massively grew that company, both organically and through M&A. Did countless acquisitions in that time span. We did this also spanned the COVID year, obviously, as you can calculate. So we had to go through COVID. It's actually funny, in that period, Atrium Innovation was the first acquisition of Nestle. Nestle, the biggest food and beverage company in the world, never did vitamin, mineral supplement in their life. Acquired Atrium Innovation, and between the time that I joined and the time I exited, we went from not having any VMS at all at Nestle to be the number one VMS player worldwide when I left.
Wow.
all that in 4.5 years. So that was quite an accomplishment, you know. So that's how massively we grew that business overall. So we're, that's that. So that was pretty big. On top of that, we continued to we went into pharma. We were not into pharma at all at Nestle. We did a couple of transactions that we went into the pharma world. We continued developing the medical nutrition. So it was a great company doing a lot of goods, and I was very proud of what we were able to accomplish at Nestle Health Science.
Well, some great milestones for you on the way to Axiom for sure. So we might have a few career-related questions for you later. We are running long. That's my fault. I'm intrigued. But let's jump to Axiom. Tell us about this company. And again, you stepped into Axiom only recently, the end of last year, I guess, to the CFO office there. Tell us about this company. What does it do? What are its offerings, really?
Well, thank you. So, look, I'm not even 2 months in my Axiom role. Axiom is another Permira-owned company, so it's PE backed as well from the same, Permira that I dealt with Axiom, and I had a great relationship with. So that was a great fit. I love working with them. So, and it's funny because this is in the legal industry. Basically, what we do is we provide flexible legal talent to companies. We service about 60% of the Fortune 500 and Fortune 1000. So basically we go help you, and you need legal services, and we come in and bring you the legal talent. So it's funny because I knew nothing about this world before. Again, I've been in manufacturing most of my life, dealing with engineers and stuff. This is a pure service company, and providing that legal talent. And I knew legal, like as a CFO, you always work very closely with the legal team, and for some reason I've always been very close to the legal teams at all the companies I've been in. But there's a bit of a black box in there as well, right? What do you do with the law firms? What do we do? And it's something that always interested me. Did so much M&A as well, dealing with the lawyers all the time on those transactions and all. But so I was dealing with it, but not fully understanding it. So I think and then I got to, when Permira called and said, Eric, we got a gig for you. I'm like, oh, I don't really know much about this industry. What do you think about me? And then you start learning about the industry, and you're like, wow, this is actually fantastic. Because what I didn't realize is, the way that it basically works, the talent we have, the actual lawyers, the attorneys are fantastic. Like actually, when we look at our score, like the surveys we do and stuff, like 90% of the talent we have is actually so strong. It's actually better than what they have at law firm, like at a 90% rate. So like, wow. And the talent loves it because it gives them flexibility and stuff. Like they're super happy that they don't have to go through the same grind. The clients are super happy because we're at about half the price of a law firm, for talent that is equal or above what they have, usually from that same law firm or other providers. And then obviously we come in between. And on top of that, we're building like great technology. Like we have a great product platform. So working a lot on the tech aspect, working a lot on the marketing aspect. We have obviously a very premium offering. So it's kind of a white glove services with a tremendous sales force that really, treat the customers like the clients, like in a very strong basis. So I'm like, wow, this is, again, to me, it's really important that wherever you go, you love the culture and you believe in the product you're selling. And even though I knew nothing about this, I'm like, this is something I wish I knew like 20 years ago. Like, can you imagine how much more I would have been able to do if I knew this existed? Like, it's rare that you see like such a true win-win situation where both the talent itself is so happy and really want to work with you. The client is overall super pleased. I'm like, this sells itself. Like, this is a no-brainer. Like, so like to me, like it made so much sense. Like, I'm like, hey, I want to discover more. I want to know more about this. It was also great for me because, again, having dealt with engineering, manufacturing so much in my career, this is pure service, and it changes the way you look at the numbers, changes the way you look at the performance. I don't have a manufacturing plan to look at for the first time in my life. So, and it's like a very KPI-driven organization, like very sales-driven and stuff. So it changes my perspective on the business and how I look at things. And I think it's fantastic. So it's been a great learning so far with, I have to say, a fantastic team.
So, to try to boil down, I'm thinking, okay, these attorneys who like to join your organization, they like the flexibility. There's something that inside a law firm, the cultures one to the next can be, stifling.
It's a bunch of things, just because that's why it's such a win situation. It's the flexibility for sure. Like we have a bunch of people that work 20 hours per week, 30 hours per week. They take 6 months off to go travel the world or whatever. Like you see a lot of those, which is fantastic. It's also the prospect a little bit like I was describing my experience with KPMG to have access to all these interesting accounts. Like, again, we do have so many great, interesting accounts. Like you can work with Google, you can work with Apple, you can work with all the big banks. You can work it's very appealing. So wherever almost I want to work with, I can. And we have that international exposure as well, like wherever within the US, we have a strong presence in Europe, in Asia as well. So it gives you that flexibility a little bit. So again, they love the flexibility. They love the family business we're being able to create, kind of thing, like that family feeling, like you feel home, you're an Axiomite, like you feel good. You got access to all these clients. So you keep learning if you're curious intellectually. So it's crazy. Like we don't struggle at all to find the talent. Actually, we have a problem because we can only take very few of those that apply.
So if this was a traditional consulting firm, I would say, aha, okay, it's billable hours. That's the revenue stream. Is it? How does your revenue model look different?
Billable hours is definitely a big thing. So from that aspect, it's very consistent. The big difference I would say is that our talent is really placed at the client. So like as a real cost of goods sold in that case. So it's not like the grind of the consultant that got a bunch of young kids and you abuse them like 100 hours a week, like, which is fine. Like I've done that route and it's part of the journey and it's fun. But like in that case, you're actually not getting the junior, you're getting actually very top level talent. Like we're much higher on the spectrum of who's going to do the work. But it's actually not the same kind of grind because they're not going from engagement into engagement. Like oftentimes they'll work for 6 months or 9 months or 12 months. Like these are longer duration engagement with those high quality client basically. And they go in and they do like their 20, 30, 40, 50 hours per week, depending. Like there's different agreements that we have, but they work exclusively for that client. They're managed by the client. So they're part of the client family. They're not coming as the outsider telling you what to do and building PowerPoints. They're part of your team actually doing the project for you.
So, and again, you mentioned to us you stepped in only in the last two months. What are the numbers that you immediately wanted to understand better and track regularly? What are you looking at?
It's basically, again, it's to change having been in manufacturing for such a long time in my career, right? It's how to look at KPI from a service business standpoint. As you just mentioned, the billable hours, like the talent utilization. I'm pleased as well because my job, a board I am with just traditional finance by now, I hope. So, I'm in charge of the deal desk. So we approve transaction by transaction. We look at things. I'm in charge of what we call the operation model. So all the KPI that we give to our talent team, to our sales team and stuff. So we're really, very close, tight hip with the business itself, helping it, driving, looking at those KPI. It's a very data rich environment. And that's something I like. P is also very good for that. Like you have fact-based discussion, right? It's good to have stakeholder management and big governance, but it's great to make decisions based on real data and hard facts. And we're the house of all this hard data and hard facts. So I'm already within 2 months, like I'm already a big driver in my team, in terms of making those decisions.
I want to just touch on AI with you.
Yep.
Is there potentially an AI offering here for the legal environment? We know a lot of legal documents are templates and you got to go through them. They just take hours and hours to produce and read or whatever. And yet we know AI could be a powerful tool in this area. Is it part of the future of the company?
Oh, it's a huge part of the future, I have to say, like overall. And some of that future is actually potentially pretty nearby. So, and I see that it's an amazing opportunity. At the same time, it's a great risk. As you said, like reviewing legal document is a difficult task and stuff. Like AI can actually do a very good job going through it. So the document review piece, the overall paralegal piece, a lot of that can potentially be automated. Again, I'm no expert on the topic. I'm not an attorney myself. I don't want to speak out of it. But a lot of that can actually be done. I mean, some of it is the same we see in finance, but clearly from the legal aspect, we see a lot of potential there.
Can you maybe provide some insight from what you've discovered so far, how Axiom could be adopting and integrating AI technologies into its operations, how the company runs? Is that an area you can leverage AI?
Absolutely. We're looking at a couple of solutions for legal tech in terms of, how we can enable some of those tools. So that's something we're looking at right now. We're not quite there yet, but there's a lot of nice, interesting tools that we're looking at. But there's also like AI expertise that is needed. Like everybody's overwhelmed. Like it's there. Everybody talks about AI. There's a lot going on, but like, how can you really help leverage that and stuff? So we actually, a lot of part of our talent actually is getting a bit more specialized into that AI field to help the companies navigate what you can and cannot do. And that's where come the risk piece as well. Let's be clear, like especially from legal, like you're dealing with confidential information and stuff. Like you got to be careful what AI has access to. There's regulatory piece that is coming, like you see government stepping in and making rules and stuff. So companies have to navigate towards that as well. And there's potential some job that may become obsolete. So that's why like there's a big balance between the risk and the opportunity on that front. And Axiom is at the center of it, I would say.
As you look to sort of get smart on AI yourself, you and other C-suite members discuss all of what sort of what you just pointed out to us. A lot of companies are going to struggle with their own legal liabilities and obligations as AI becomes a bigger part of their business models, and that's a ripe area. Where are you going to get smart? What resources do you have?
I would say that the key is to remain on top of it, right? This is a super quick and evolving, changing field, right? So you gotta, it changes every day, right? The regulation changes every day. You need the right expertise, and that's why we're originally uniquely positioned, really, because given the crazy talent base that we have, like those 3,000 active talents that we have more than 10,000 lawyers on overall. So get that expertise, making sure that the talent continue to be trained. Us as well as a head office, we do dabble quite a bit in it, like looking at that legal tech, look what's out there. We're the biggest one in the industry, right? So we have a unique vantage point to be at the forefront of it. But again, if you sit on your hands for too long, you're going to be obsolete very, very quickly. It doesn't matter where you're starting from because this field is changing so much.
Yeah.
And sometimes like size doesn't necessarily help you on those things because a lot of the small startup actually are getting the technology that you really need. So you really need to look all everywhere and be on your toes basically to maximize it. Same thing with the regulatory environment. It changes super quickly. So you need to be there at the forefront of it as it changes.
We're going to jump to our finance strategic moment question where I'll ask you just one anecdote or story from your career where you believe you experienced a finance strategic moment. Anything come to mind?
Well, obviously, it's hard for me to pass on the fact of what I told you before a little bit with my experience with Primero and Axiom, and when came time to do so again, I had I had about 4 years to prepare for it as the CFO of the company, which was a perfect timing, I would say. So, really put the team in place and the building block and go from like a smaller organization to a more mature, more sophisticated, more in control of your data. Then came the time for the exit. And my goodness, like I realized as a finance, again, I've been blessed again, as I said, great career, like really proud of what I've been able to accomplish. But when that exit came, like as a CFO, you're actually in the center stage, and I had done some M&A on the buy side, done a lot more since. But on the sell side, when you're actually the one selling and it's a significant transaction, there's a lot to do. Like it's all those due diligence meetings and putting the data room in place and stuff. Like it was such an amazing finance experience for me because it's all together. Like you see all these things you've been building, all that business knowledge, all these tools and reports and stuff that you've put, all come into the one place. And these different stakeholders, because obviously you talk with more than one party, they come from different places, they ask different questions, they want to understand your risk profile. So all that you've built over these years all come into the one place. And it's not about the Excel spreadsheet. You need to have it in your head. Like, how many meetings did I get thrown in? And literally, like, they have their big four accounting firm. There are 20 people that studied your numbers for hours and hours and hours. And you're there sitting alone, talking to 20 of them, and they bombard you each with their question, and they have the luxury of time because while one is asking a question, the other 19 are preparing their next question and stuff, and you're there alone and having to filter all this. And what an experience it was. Like you really got to be on top of your game. And again, it's not just about the finance piece because they go everywhere, and it's a bit of the IR, right? It's what to say, what not to say. You have nothing to hide per se, but there's a way that you need to position and frame the answer to be consistent from one answer to the other. So it was an amazing experience, I have to say. It was my first one and my only one from the sell side, and what a learning it was. It's also like one of those, like, again, I love the change, I love the challenge and stuff, but it's like, I remember one day we were closing the transaction, and Monday morning I go to the office, normal, do my thing, got a phone call from Premier, hey, we need you in New York right now. Take a plane. Assistant books a plane 2 hours later. You go to New York. You're supposed to spend the day there. You ended up spending the week there. You go buy some clothes and stuff. Like when you go in and you get in there, like there's a room of 100 lawyers, and you get in and we need answers. Okay, what's the topic? And you just got to know your stuff like pretty much inside out, and it's very fulfilling. And at the end of the day, you have something really concrete. Like now you have that company that it's like your baby that you took and I guess adulthood kind of thing. And now like I see the company mature with the Nestle Health Science and I'm still very proud as of today to see how we were able to build and accomplish. And it's again, it all falls together. It's all that mix of legal and strategy and business and all these different projects that you did all come into one place. That's beautiful.
Just curious, was there ever another party, went down the aisle a little bit with Atrium and then said, no, it's not going to work? Were there false starts before Nestle came?
The way the process was run, actually, Premier is pretty good at these things. But yeah, we did speak with many different stakeholders,
Yep.
Different party, like Nestle was one of them, but we spoke with many others. Some of them dropped from the get-go, like, they were just wanted to see the book a little bit and learn about the business. But we got pretty serious with a few of them, I would say.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you dance pretty late and some of them end up dropping. Some of them go all the way to make bids and stuff. But,
Right.
it's a negotiation process at the end, right?
Right.
So.
CFOs and controllers, does expense management feel like a necessary evil? It's time to switch to Brex. Brex automates and accelerates spend management with easy-to-use corporate cards, travel, expense management, and bill pay, all on one AI-powered platform. Brex makes it easy to boost efficiency and compliance enterprise-wide and free up your managers, employees, and accounting team for higher impact work. Top companies from startups to enterprises are using Brex to automate manual work and transform their finance operations. We're talking DoorDash, Robinhood, Airtable, and countless other industry leaders. Ready to join them? Switch to AI-powered spend management at Brex.com. Okay, we're going to jump to the mentoring round where we'll ask you several quick questions intended to inform and inspire future finance leaders. We want you to think back to Atrium again, which you were giving us some taste there, but just your early days there, that first 30 or 90 days when you stepped into a CFO role. What is it that you'd go back in time and tell yourself there must have been something, despite all the experience that you had at that time, that the CFO role just surprised you? There was some other responsibility, some way of dealing with your C-suite peers that perhaps was something of a revelation to you? Anything?
I would say, look, I guess CFO role is just another role. So don't be intimidated by it. Like, I think it's, you should never betray your own values. Like you are who you are. There's a reason why you're there. Believe in yourself and be consistent with your values. It's not because now you're in that C-suite role that you change who you are. It's not going to happen and you're not going to be happy with it anyway. So you really need to believe in your fundamental value. I guess the only thing that I guess maybe you learn is the stakeholder management becomes even more critical. Now you're dealing at very high level. Your words have also more meaning. Sometimes you say some things and you realize, oh, everybody's doing it. Like what happened? Like you're not necessarily used to your word have such a meaning, or you go to a meeting and everybody's looking up to you like you're expecting to talk, right? I mean, I like to listen, but there's some meetings like people are looking up and, hey, no, you're the boss. You got to talk. Like it's up to you. Or so I guess it's about how you bring your point. You got to be a bit more careful. Again, I want to make sure my team speaks up. So if you come too forceful, the team won't be able to speak up. So finding a way to like speak, but not speak enough that they can come in and chime in and stuff, and making sure that they have the floor, because no matter how smart you are, you're almost always much smarter as a team, just to be clear. So you want to make sure that you develop the people underneath you and that they fully speak up. And for that, you need to give them the proper floor and access to be able to do it and make them feel comfortable that they can do it, while you still need to make the decision at the end oftentimes. So we always like to ask our guests to reflect a little on the personal side for us. We're wondering, is there something many of your colleagues might not even know about you, something that you do, something that occupies your time, something you enjoy, anything on the personal side of life? Well, look, I'm a pretty open book. I'm really not a two-faced person, as you can see. So my colleagues know me very well. Like, you ask me a question, you'll get a straight answer. Like there's no funny business with me. So I guess, people that want to know, they know everything about me. Maybe what could be interesting, I actually live with 5 women because I have 4 daughters and 4 of which are in the teenage years. So I do feel sometimes I'm living in a tornado, I have to say. as the only man of the house.
Yep.
But no, this is quite fun. And I have to say, I do enjoy my family time like tremendously, like spending time with them and like seeing how they develop as beautiful young adults kind of thing. So that is something I have to say I quite enjoy, and that you need to learn in time as well how to balance properly. I mean, we're all hard worker, but I mean, finding that balance in your life is very critical.
Nice. Would you have a book selection for us? Doesn't have to be a business book. Doesn't have to be.
Well, I mean, absolutely. I'm actually love those transformational books. Like I read a lot of business books, like the World is Flat, Good to Great, Fooled by Randomness, Measure What Matters. Like there's a bunch of business books I love and quote and stuff. But to me, the books that really had the most impact are the real transformational book, the book that make you evolve. Like I'm reading a lot about emotional intelligence right now, for instance, because how you properly balance it. I guess one book maybe to recommend, a mentor of mine recommended me Square One. Actually bought it for me, which is a fantastic book by Joseph Maroon. Basically, it explains a little bit how you need to balance your life, right? I mean, they ask you to draw a square basically between work, physical, relationship, and spiritual, and depending on how much time you invest in each, like the line needs to be long. What you're aiming for is to have a good, properly balanced square. And if your square is not balanced, you need to put more emphasis on it. So I think it's actually a very good, simple way to look at life. He's coming from a lot of personal experience. So to me, that's great. I love Eckhart Tolle as well, like for Power of Now and You Heard, like those kind of books. I think they're very fulfilling to remind ourselves, like, we're part of a bigger thing here. I read a lot of books about the environment as well. I care a lot for our planet. So that's a little bit of what's on my night table, I guess.
So we're up to our final question. We're going to ask you to look forward for us finally. We're wondering what your priorities are for the next 12 months. What would those be, your CFO priorities?
Well, I mean, we 2023 was a kind of a weird year from a market standpoint, right? Everybody's a little bit on the sideline and waiting what's going to happen. The interest rates are supposed to me, I guess the key is to be flexible, like, get ready. We hope the market will be recovering very shortly, so we want to be ready to jump on that bandwagon of a very hot market. At the same time, you need to keep the pulse. If it takes a little bit more time and stuff, how do you adjust? So that flexibility is obviously extremely important to me. Obviously, I'm 2 months in my role, so I was brought in for a reason. I want to continue working with my team and helping some of those key projects that we have and driving those initiatives. I want to continue to establish my learning of the business and building the partnership with the other stakeholders. So I would say from a CFO standpoint, these are my priorities for the next 12 months.
Eric Bouchard, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
Thank you very much.
Hello, Thought Leader listeners. We hope 2024 is treating you well. If you haven't already, we hope you'll pay a visit to CFOThoughtLeader.com and go ahead and subscribe to our Mentoring Round newsletter, where we highlight the career lessons and moments of strategic insight shared by our recent CFO guests. Also, LinkedIn users, please go ahead and follow our CFO Thought Leader company page, and you'll be certain not to miss a single Thought Leader video debut. CFO Thought Leader, the #1 thought leadership platform exclusively for and by CFOs. As always, thank you for listening.